Let's bring in Newt Gingrich, the former Speaker of the House, Fox News contributor, and author of a brand new book, Collusion, and he's host of Newt's World podcast. Newt, so right now, Iran kind of made a bad tactical move, in my humble estimation, because now the Europeans have no rationale for staying in the deal because they've exceeded the parameters, right?
Yeah, although the European real reasoning is they want to do business with Iran. A lot of big European companies have vision of multi-billion-dollar deals with Iran, and they're desperate to maintain some kind of relationship. So I'm not sure you can do anything to the Europeans bad enough to get them to change their pro-Iranian posture as long as they think there's profit there. The problem for the Iranians, and we've seen this now with attacks on tankers, we've seen it with an attack on an American drone, the sanctions are really biting, and month by month, their economy is getting worse, and people are getting more and more unhappy. And I think they're lashing out desperately, trying to somehow change the circumstance, either by getting us to back off or, frankly, by getting us to attack them. I think they think that they could use nationalism, defend the homeland against the Americans. And I think President Trump was very wise 2 weeks ago. Be calm, be patient, just continue to increase the pressure economically. And I think they're very close to breaking. I think this is a very, very shaky regime.
Newt, hold on one second, though. You say they're close to breaking. Clearly, Iran has made it clear that they're going to keep with the provocations. I mean, look, they have got the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most important passageway, and I don't think the president or the administration anticipates that they won't see more provocations. How do they respond?
Well, I think there may be more provocations. I think the first thing I hope the administration will do, and the president's mentioned this, is say to the Chinese and the Indians and the Japanese, what are you going to do since you're the countries that need the oil? Remember, we're now energy independent. Thanks to President Trump's policies, we actually export energy. So the Straits of Hormuz are not a crisis for us. They are a crisis for China, India, and Japan.
It's so
and at one level, it may well be that the Chinese bring pressure to bear on the Iranians, because the Chinese really would have a huge problem if the straits were closed off.
It's so interesting, though. If we pull out of the deal, these other countries aren't getting upset with Iran. I know they're dependent on their oil, but it's up to them to put pressure on Iran, not us, because we're not in the deal. And so I understand why Iran says, why is America upset when we have the right to be upset? But when they say, why are they upset when America pulled out of the deal? Isn't it up to these other countries? They need to push back on Iran that are still in this deal with them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's why, you know, look, I think the president, I suspect he had this conversation at the G20. He needs to remind the Chinese, the Japanese, and the Indians, they need to put pressure on the Iranian government. They're the last hope that Iran has, and they're much more important to Iran in the long run than Europe is.
Right.
So I think if the Iranians really go crazy, we obviously will respond militarily, and we can obviously respond with enormous power. But I think as long as they're just being irritants, we're better off to keep increasing the sanctions economically and keep squeezing down the Iranian dictatorship.
Absolutely, because at the very least, they're not financing the terror organizations that are wreaking havoc throughout the Middle East. Real quick, before we switch to illegal immigration here, which is a white-hot topic, let's talk about North Korea. Among the people who are complimenting the president for his daring move going to the DMZ and crossing to North Korea is Dave Ignatius on the Washington Post today. He said Trump wisely seemed to have accepted that denuclearization won't be an immediate disarmament, but a gradual monitoring process. He said that Sunday, that speed is not the object. We want to see if we can do some really comprehensive good deal. He also brought up the personal factor in diplomacy. China may have been ready for an opening to America in 1972, but it took Nixon to go to Beijing. Egypt may have been primed for peace in Israel in 1978, but it took Jimmy Carter to negotiate the Camp Davis Accords. Could this be one of the moments?
Yeah, I thought it was very telling. Callista and I had been at the DMZ a couple months ago, and thinking back to that experience, I thought it was very clever of Trump to say, why don't we get together, to do it sort of semi-spontaneously. Why don't we get together? Oh, why don't you invite me into North Korea? So they walk in, I think, 10 or 20 steps, turn around, get a nice photo op, walk back into South Korea, and spend an hour negotiating in a building that's actually technically in South Korea. But what it communicated was that we are allowing North Korea to begin to be a normal country in terms of relating to it without having dropped a single sanction. Remember, Trump didn't give them anything in terms of economic sanctions. He gave them a nice photo op, had a nice conversation. They're now reopening the negotiations, and apparently they've upgraded it on their side. I just saw a story this morning where Secretary Pompeo indicated he thought that the new North Korean negotiating team would have more authority and be more responsible.
Yeah, he might have killed the old ones.
That's true. It's a step forward.
Yeah, the problem is he might have killed the old ones.
Newt, let me turn topics, though, because I was covering that 2020 debate in Miami, and we had a moment, you may have seen it, where they asked the candidates on Thursday night to raise their hand if they supported giving health care to undocumented immigrants, 11 million undocumented immigrants. We now have a new poll out on whether the government should provide health insurance to illegal immigrants. It's a CNN poll. 38% say yes, 59% say no, 3% no opinion. What say you?
I think it's crazy, and I think if people think it through, if you say to the entire planet, if you get sick and sneak into the U.S., we'll provide you free health care. We are asking for an unending flow of people coming here to get health care. Now, at a time when there are a lot of Americans who have a hard time paying for their health care, there's something infuriating about a Democratic Party which has decided it cares more for people who break the law, and that's what we're talking about, people who break the law coming into the U.S. Democrats care more about them than it cares about taking care of people who need help here in the United States. I think it's pretty crazy, but it fits everything else we're seeing. It doesn't matter in the end who the Democrats are going to nominate. It's going to be essentially the same ideologically left-wing person, totally out of touch with the average American.
What happened? We have Chuck Schumer talking about the outrage of this. We have Bill Clinton building a wall. Harry Reid talked about the idiocy of chain migration, the illogic of it. Was this a tactical move by Democrats? Did they think they were wrong when they were strong at the border?
No, I think what's happened is that the left wing of the Democratic Party now defines the Democratic Party. The left wing is made up of people who want open borders, who want to flood America with people who are here illegally, who want to fundamentally change America. These are people who believe that Americans come last, not first. So these are the kind of folks who, and I think I was pretty outraged when you get a left-wing, excuse me, when you get a left-wing Democrat who goes to the border, attacks the people who are trying to protect us.
AOC.
While the Democrats fail to solve the problem, fail to fix the law, and now we have a huge mess. But that mess belongs to the Democrats in Congress, not to the Border Patrol trying to do its job.
And she refused to write. She did not vote for the humanitarian aid at the border, but she decries the humanitarian conditions at the border. Make sense of that.
You can't. I think it's total hypocrisy. I think it's frankly disgusting. And I think it's part of a general anti-Americanism that runs through that wing of the Democratic Party.
So, Newt, how does you had this job? How does Speaker Pelosi now try and rein in members like AOC who are clearly taking politics to a whole nother level? Because it is undeniable now, even by Democrats' accounts, that we are in a full-blown crisis at the border. And now you have a handful of members given to the left-wing progressive ideas that is really making this a lot worse than it is. How does Speaker Pelosi rein this in?
Well, she does exactly what she just did. She caves to the Senate Majority Leader. I mean, Mitch McConnell won 100% to 0 in the struggle over passing the humanitarian bill. And she had no choice, because her left wing wouldn't do anything rational, and her moderates now are beginning to realize they're going to get beat next year if they keep hanging around with these left wingers. And so the only thing she could do was side with the House Republicans. So Kevin McCarthy and Mitch McConnell defined the bill. Nancy Pelosi was basically left with no choice. That's going to happen over and over for the next 2 years.
I'm hopeful that Lindsey Graham and Nancy Pelosi work something out. They spoke for an hour over the weekend. Lindsey Graham needs 4, and so do we, need 4 simple asylum fixes. They're not very political. They're logical. Maybe something could get done, because this, and Ainsley, I don't think this issue works for Democrats.
Well, I don't think it's going to. I don't think they're going to come together. We haven't seen that happen yet.
I'm hopeful
that happen yet. I think you and I both need some water, Newt, so we'll let you go. Have a great day. Thanks for being with us.